I stared at the letter in my hands, reading it for the fourth time, hoping the words would somehow rearrange themselves into something less absurd. The heavy cardstock paper, embossed with Davidson and Associates Legal Services, felt like it was burning my fingers. My name is Marin, and my grandfather just posthumously challenged me to become a millionaire. $500,000 in 12 months, I muttered, sinking deeper into my mother's worn leather couch. What kind of twisted game is this? Mom appeared in the doorway of her kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. You've been staring at that letter for 20 minutes. Want to tell me what's going on? I cleared my throat. Remember how Grandpa Jack always said I had potential, but needed proper motivation? I made air quotes with trembling fingers. Well, apparently, he left me an inheritance. $2 million. Mom's eyes widened. That's unexpected. Oh, it gets better. I laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. I only get it if I can prove I've independently earned $500,000 within the next year. Otherwise, it all goes to charity. The dish towel dropped from her hands. He what? According to his lawyers, he called it incentivizing excellence. I stood up, pacing the familiar living room where I'd spent countless Sunday dinners. Who does this? Who dangles $2 million in front of their granddaughter, like some sort of twisted carrot? Mom's face did that thing where she's trying not to show emotion, but her eyes give everything away. Your grandfather had his own way of doing things. That's putting it mildly. I stopped at the mantel, picking up an old photo of Grandpa Jack at my college graduation. He was beaming, but now I could see something calculating in his eyes. Did you know about this? No, she said quietly, but I'm not surprised. Dad always thought struggle built character. He wasn't exactly thrilled when I married your father and chose to be a teacher instead of joining the family business. My phone buzzed. A text from Nolan. Dinner at my parents' tonight. Mom's making her famous pot roast. Don't forget.
Great.
Just what I needed. An evening with my future mother-in-law, who already thought I wasn't good enough for her precious son. I could picture Celeste Granger's perfectly manicured eyebrows rising when she heard about this inheritance challenge. What are you going to do? Mom asked, breaking into my thoughts. I set the photo down harder than necessary. I'm going to do it. I'm going to earn that money. Honey, that's a lot of pressure to put on yourself. $500,000 in a year? I've already got my online business bringing in decent money. With some expansion, I trailed off, mental calculations running wild. Besides, this isn't just about the inheritance anymore. It's about proving something.
To whom?
Your grandfather's already gone. To myself. I picked up my bag, suddenly energized. And to everyone who ever looked at me like I was just skating by on Nolan's family connections. Mom's expression softened. Marin, sweetie, you don't have to. Yes, I do. I hugged her quickly. I have to go. Dinner with the Grangers awaits, and I need to figure out how to break this news to Nolan. As I drove home, my mind raced with possibilities. My handmade jewelry business had been steadily growing, but to hit $500,000 in profits within a year? I'd need to scale up dramatically, take risks, maybe even step on some toes. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Nolan. Mom wants to know if you're still doing that crafting thing, or if you've considered the position at Dad's firm. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, a plan beginning to form. Grandpa Jack wanted to motivate me?
Fine.
But he probably never imagined his challenge would end up completely reshaping not just my business, but every relationship in my life. Game on, Grandpa. Game on. The Grangers' dining room always felt like a museum, beautiful, cold, and full of things I wasn't supposed to touch. I sat rigid in my chair, the weight of Celeste's scrutiny heavier than a sterling silver fork in my hand. So, Marin, Celeste said, cutting her pot roast with surgical precision, Nolan tells me your little jewelry business is keeping you occupied. I caught Nolan's eye across the table, but he suddenly became very interested in his green beans. Actually, I have some exciting news about that. My voice sounded too loud in the formal dining room. I'm expanding the business. Significantly. Everett Granger looked up from his phone for the first time since dinner began. Oh? And where are you securing the capital for this expansion? Before I could answer, Celeste jumped in. Darling, you're not asking Nolan to invest, are you? You know how I feel about mixing business with pleasure. No, I said firmly, setting down my fork. Actually, it's related to my grandfather's will. He left me an inheritance, but there's a condition attached. I need to earn $500,000 independently within the next year. The silence that followed was deafening. Nolan choked on his wine. $500,000? Celeste's perfectly plucked eyebrows arched toward her hairline. From selling handmade trinkets. They're artisanal pieces, Nolan corrected weakly, finally finding his voice. And Marin's quite successful already. Successful is relative, dear. Celeste dabbed her lips with her napkin. Everett, didn't you mention there was an opening in the marketing department? I did. Everett nodded, finally pocketing his phone. Good benefits, clear advancement path. Much more stable than entrepreneurship. My chest tightened. I appreciate the thought, but I'm committed to growing my own business. Commitment is admirable, Celeste said, her tone suggesting it was anything but. Though sometimes wisdom lies in knowing when to accept help, especially with a wedding to plan. I felt Nolan tense across the table. We hadn't even officially announced our engagement yet. Mother, Nolan started. I'm simply saying, Celeste continued, reaching for her wine glass, that certain lifestyle expectations come with being a Granger. We wouldn't want anyone feeling overwhelmed. The pot roast turned to ash in my mouth. I'm quite capable of managing both my business and my personal life. Of course you are, dear. Celeste's smile didn't reach her eyes. Though I must ask, this inheritance condition, it seems rather convenient, doesn't it? My fork clattered against the plate. Excuse me? Mother, please, Nolan interrupted, but his protest sounded more like a whimper. I'm only looking out for everyone's interests, Celeste said. After all, we barely know anything about Marin's family. And now suddenly, there's this mysterious inheritance with specific conditions. I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping against the hardwood floor. My grandfather built his entire business from nothing. He believed in earning success, not inheriting it. The barb hit home. Celeste's face flushed. Well, we can certainly see where you get your ambitious nature. Marin, Nolan said softly, maybe we should. Should what, Nolan? I turned to him, waiting for him to defend me, to say anything meaningful. But he just sat there, trapped between his mother's expectations and my dignity. I stood up. Thank you for dinner, but I should go. I have an early meeting tomorrow with my business mentor. Oh yes, that little person, Celeste said. The one with the interesting background. I grabbed my purse, my hands shaking. At least he earned his success instead of marrying into it. The words hung in the air like smoke. Nolan's face went pale. Everett actually put his phone down. I'll walk you out, Nolan said quickly, but I was already heading for the door. Marin, wait, he called after me in the driveway. They mean well, they're just what, Nolan? Just trying to protect you from your gold-digging girlfriend? Just trying to maintain their precious family image. He ran his hands through his hair. You know it's not like that. Give them time. Time? I laughed bitterly. I have exactly 12 months to prove myself, Nolan. And I can't waste any more of it trying to win approval from people who've already decided I'm not good enough. I got in my car, leaving Nolan standing in the driveway, caught between two worlds. As I drove away, my phone buzzed with a text from Lyle. Got some interesting news about potential investors. Coffee tomorrow. I smiled grimly. Celeste Granger had no idea what she was up against. Game on, indeed. The coffee shop buzzed with morning energy as Lyle slid a folder across the table to me. Remember that boutique in Singapore I mentioned? They want to place a major order. We're talking serious numbers here. I flipped through the purchase order, my heart racing. I did the quick math in my head. This could put me halfway to my goal. Exactly. Lyle leaned back, his usual confident smile faltering slightly. But there's something else you should see. He pulled up an email on his phone and handed it to me. As I read, my stomach dropped. Someone had been contacting my potential business partners, warning them about working with me. The email contained detailed concerns about my company's stability and hints about my questionable business practices. The timing is interesting, Lyle said carefully. Right after your dinner with the Grangers. My hands clenched around my coffee cup. Celeste. You can't prove it's her. I don't need to prove it. I know. I pushed the coffee aside, suddenly nauseated. She's trying to sabotage me. My phone buzzed. Nolan again. I'd been avoiding his calls since the dinner disaster 3 days ago. This time, I answered. Hey, he said, sounding tired. Can we talk? Mother wants to apologize. She's hosting a lunch for some of her charity board members today and specifically asked if you'd come. I caught Lyle's warning look. An apology lunch? Really? Please? It would mean a lot to me. 2 hours later, I walked into the country club's private dining room, wearing my most professional dress, the one that made me feel like I could conquer the world. Or at least survive lunch with Celeste Granger. Marin, darling. Celeste air-kissed my cheeks. I'm so glad you could join us. Ladies, this is Nolan's friend, Marin. Friend, not fiancé. I forced a smile as she introduced me to 3 impeccably dressed women who looked at me like I was a mildly interesting museum exhibit. Marin makes jewelry, Celeste explained, her tone suggesting I made macaroni necklaces in kindergarten. Though I hear she's trying to expand. How's that going, dear? Actually, I started, but one of the women, Barbara, cut in. Oh, Celeste mentioned something about that. Isn't there some inheritance situation? My blood froze. I looked at Celeste, who sipped her wine innocently. It came up in conversation, she said smoothly. We were all so concerned about the pressure you must be under, especially given your family's history. My family's history? Well, your father's gambling problems, dear. And those unfortunate business dealings. The room spun slightly. My father had struggled with addiction years ago, but he'd been clean for a decade. It was private family history that I'd only ever shared with Nolan. It's just, Celeste continued, we'd hate to see history repeat itself. Addiction can be genetic, you know, whether it's gambling or other compulsive behaviors. The other women nodded sympathetically. I stood up so quickly my water glass tipped over, spreading across the pristine white tablecloth like blood. I need to make a call, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Business emergency. In the hallway, I pulled up the Singapore boutique's email. Their concerns about my family history and financial stability suddenly made perfect sense. My phone buzzed with a text from Lyle. Singapore deals off. They heard some troubling rumors. Want to talk strategy. Another text came through, this time from Nolan. How's lunch going? Mother says you seem tense. I leaned against the wall, closing my eyes. Celeste wasn't just trying to drive me away from Nolan. She was actively trying to destroy my business, my reputation, my chance at the inheritance, all while maintaining her perfect society matron facade. Opening my eyes, I straightened my spine and typed a response to Lyle. Strategy, meeting tomorrow. Time to fight fire with fire. If Celeste wanted to play dirty, fine. But she'd forgotten something crucial. I had nothing left to lose, and thanks to my grandfather's challenge, everything to gain. I walked back into the dining room, smile firmly in place. Sorry about that, ladies. Now, Celeste, you were saying something about family history? Let's talk about that. You want to do what? Lyle stared at me across his office desk, eyebrows raised. The morning sun through his window cast harsh shadows across the investment proposals spread between us. Launch a luxury line. High-end pieces, exclusive materials, limited collections. I pushed forward the market research I'd spent 3 sleepless nights compiling. We target the exact social circle Celeste thinks I don't belong in. It's risky, Lyle said, flipping through the numbers. You'd need to invest almost everything you've saved, plus take out loans. I know. And if it fails, I lose everything. I stood up, pacing the office. But if it works, I'll have proof that I belong in their world. On my own terms. My phone buzzed. Another message from Nolan. Mother's asking about wedding dates. Maybe we should start planning. I ignored it, focusing instead on the prototype jewelry pieces I'd brought. The centerpiece was a necklace that had taken me weeks to perfect, platinum and black diamonds arranged in a pattern that echoed my grandfather's company logo. Lal picked up the necklace, studying it. This is different from your usual style. It's evolution. I took the piece from him, the metal cool against my palm. I'm done making pretty trinkets. These pieces tell a story. Celeste's story? My story. I set the necklace down carefully. Did you know she's been calling my suppliers? 3 more backed out this week. Lyle's expression darkened. That's crossing a line. She crossed that line weeks ago. I pulled up an email on my phone. But look what I found while doing market research. Apparently, before marrying Everett, Celeste worked as a salesgirl at a department store jewelry counter. Interesting timing, considering the Grangers' annual charity gala is next month. Very interesting. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it, especially since I'd just received an invitation to showcase my new collection there. From Celeste. From Barbara Thompson, one of her charity board friends. Turns out she was quite impressed by my entrepreneurial spirit at that lunch. I sat back down. Celeste doesn't know yet. The office door opened and Nolan walked in. My heart stopped. Surprise, he said weakly. Your assistant said you were here. Lyle stood smoothly. I'll give you 2 a moment. As he left, Nolan's eyes fell on the prototype necklace. That's different. It's for the new luxury line I'm launching. I watched his face carefully. The one your mother's been trying to sabotage. Marin, she's just protective. She's been calling my suppliers, spreading rumors about my family. My voice cracked slightly. And you've known about it, haven't you? His silence was answer enough. She mentioned something about checking into your background. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I told her it wasn't necessary, but you didn't stop her. I thought if she saw there was nothing to worry about, she'd accept you. I picked up the necklace, its weight suddenly significant. You know what's ironic? Your mother worked jewelry retail before meeting your father. She probably knows exactly how hard it is to build something from nothing. Nolan's face paled. How did you? Research. The same kind she's been doing on me. I moved toward the door. I'm showcasing at the charity gala next month. Will you be there? Of course, but he reached for my hand. Maybe we should wait on announcing the engagement. Give everyone time to adjust. I pulled away, my grandfather's challenge echoing in my head. Success wasn't just about money anymore. It was about proving I could stand on my own, even if it meant standing alone. You're right, I said quietly. We should wait. As I walked past him, Lal reappeared in the doorway. The investors are here, ready to present the new line. I straightened my spine, gripping my portfolio tighter. Actually, I have some last-minute changes to the business plan. Let's talk about exclusive distribution rights. Behind me, I heard Nolan leave without another word. Some battles you fight alone, and some victories you win for yourself. The ring felt heavy on my finger as I stared at the final production samples for my luxury line. Nolan had proposed last night, a quiet, almost apologetic affair at my apartment. Nothing like the grand gesture I'd once imagined. The timing's perfect, he'd said, sliding the family heirloom onto my finger. Maybe this will help Mother see you differently. My phone buzzed with another text from Lyle. Major problem with the gala showcase. Need to meet now. I found him pacing outside a downtown cafe, his usually calm demeanor shattered. They're pulling our spot in the showcase.
What?
Barbara promised. Barbara's been replaced as event chair. Lyle's expression was grim. Guess who's taking over? My stomach dropped. Celeste. She's restructuring the whole event. Your slot's been given to some French designer. I gripped the edge of a nearby table, my engagement ring catching the sunlight. She doesn't know about the proposal yet. Maybe that's why. Marin. A familiar voice cut through our conversation. I turned to see Iris walking toward us, shopping bags in hand. Her eyes fixed on my ring, widening in surprise. When did this happen? Last night. I touched the ring unconsciously. I was going to tell you. Over dinner tonight, I hope. Another voice joined us, Celeste, appearing like a perfectly coiffed ghost. Barbara trailing behind her looking apologetic. Celeste, I managed, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Congratulations on chairing the gala. Yes, well, someone needed to maintain certain standards. Her eyes flicked to my ring, then back to my face. Though I see congratulations are in order for you as well.
How?
Surprising that Nolan didn't mention his plans. It was spontaneous, I said, watching her expression carefully. Spontaneous. She tested the word like it was foreign. Rather like your last-minute addition to our showcase. Barbara was quite enthusiastic about your involvement. Unfortunately, we've had to make some changes. Due to maintaining standards? The words slipped out before I could stop them. Celeste's smile tightened. Due to experience. The gala has a certain reputation to uphold. We can't risk featuring untested designers, especially those with questionable business practices. Iris stepped forward. Excuse me? Oh, you haven't heard? Celeste's voice dripped with false concern. There are some troubling rumors about financial irregularities in Marin's business. Anonymous tips to the business bureau, that sort of thing. My vision blurred at the edges. You're investigating my business? The board has a duty to protect our donors' interests. She adjusted her designer bag. Though I'm sure everything will sort itself out. Eventually, Nolan always did have a soft spot for rehabilitation projects. That's enough. Iris's voice cut through the tension. My daughter has accepted my son's proposal, Celeste interrupted smoothly. Which makes this a family matter. Speaking of which, dinner tonight at 7? We should start discussing wedding plans. Something small and private might be best, given the circumstances. I looked down at my ring, then at the production samples in my bag, pieces I'd poured my heart and savings into, designed to prove I belonged in their world. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. You're right, I said quietly. This is a family matter. I slipped the ring off my finger and held it out to her. Give this back to Nolan. Tell him I'm sorry, but I can't marry someone who lets his mother fight his battles. Marin, Barbara started, but I was already walking away. The showcase starts at 8. I called over my shoulder. I'll see you there. You've been removed from the program, Celeste reminded me, her voice sharp. I turned back, smiling for the first time since she'd arrived. Check your email. Barbara wasn't the only board member impressed by my entrepreneurial spirit. And unlike you, I earned my spot in that showcase. Just like I earned everything else in my life. As I walked away, I heard Lyle hurrying to catch up. Please tell me you have a plan. Oh, I do. I pulled out my phone, dialing a number I'd been saving. Remember those investors who are interested in exclusive distribution rights? Tell them I'm ready to talk. And Lyle, make sure they understand exactly who they're dealing with. The game had changed. Celeste wanted to play hardball?
Fine.
But she'd forgotten something crucial. I wasn't just fighting for an inheritance anymore. I was fighting for my future, on my own terms. The charity gala sparkled with wealth and pretension, exactly as I remembered from previous years. Only this time, I wasn't here as Nolan's plus one. I was here as competition. They're setting up your display in the East Wing, Lyle murmured, appearing at my elbow. Celeste tried to have it moved to the service corridor, but the other board members overruled her. I smoothed down my black dress, the one I designed my signature necklace to complement. And the investors? Front row for your presentation. Across the room, I caught Celeste holding court. Her perfectly coiffed head bent towards several society matrons. The whispers had already started, about my broken engagement, about the suspicious timing of my business expansion. Marin. Nolan's voice behind me made my spine stiffen. Can we talk? I turned to find him looking lost in his tuxedo, the one I'd helped him choose months ago. About what? How you let your mother sabotage my business. Or how you propose thinking it would fix everything. It's not that simple. Miss Calloway? A server appeared with a tablet. There's an issue with your display. Something about the security system? I followed her to find my entire collection locked behind a malfunctioning display case. The security code had been changed. Technical difficulties? Celeste's voice dripped with false concern. How unfortunate. Perhaps this is a sign you're not quite ready for this level of showcase. I've got it handled, I said, but my hands were shaking as I tried another override code.
Do you?
Like you had your engagement handled? She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Did you really think returning Nolan's ring would make you look noble? All it did was prove what I've known all along. You're not one of us. You're right. I straightened up, meeting her gaze. I'm not one of you. I'm better. Her eyes narrowed. Your presentation starts in 10 minutes. Without your collection, what exactly do you plan to show these people? The truth. I pulled out my phone, sending a pre-prepared signal to Lyle. The lights dimmed, and the massive screens around the ballroom flickered to life. There I was in my workshop crafting pieces from raw materials. Then came the sales figures, the growth charts, the international orders. What is this? Celeste hissed. My story, I said, as images of my grandfather's company logo dissolved into my new designs. But here's the interesting part. The screens shifted to show a young woman behind a jewelry counter, circa 1985. Celeste's face drained of color. Amazing what you can find in department store archives, I said quietly, especially when the salesgirl went on to marry the owner's son 6 months later. You had no right. Like you had no right to investigate my family? To spread rumors about my business. My voice carried just far enough to draw attention. The difference is I earned everything I have. Can you say the same? The ballroom had gone silent. All eyes on us. Nolan stepped forward, finally finding his voice. Mother? What's she talking about? But before Celeste could answer, another figure emerged from the crowd. Everett Granger, looking thunderous. Celeste, he said, his voice carrying. Is this true? Did you meet me while working as a salesgirl? The silence was deafening. In that moment, I should have felt triumphant. Instead, watching Celeste's carefully constructed world crumble, I felt hollow. I think, Everett continued, we need to discuss some things. Privately. As they left, Nolan caught my arm. Marin, wait. Don't. I pulled away. Just don't. I walked to the podium, my heels clicking against the marble floor. The investors were waiting. My collection was still locked away. But as I faced the crowd, I realized something. I'd won the battle. But at what cost? Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice steady despite the chaos in my heart. Tonight, I was going to show you a jewelry collection. Instead, I'm going to tell you a story about legacy, about truth, and about the price of revenge. Behind me, the screen showed my grandfather's challenge letter. Sometimes winning feels an awful lot like losing. But I was done playing by anyone else's rules, including my own. The investors loved my presentation. My phone buzzed with commitments and contracts before I even left the stage. But as the applause faded, all I could focus on was Nolan's empty chair in the front row. I found him in the garden, staring at the fountain where we'd first met 2 years ago. Your presentation was incredible, he said without turning around. You're going to hit your grandfather's goal. That's all you have to say? He finally faced me, his expression torn. What do you want me to say, Marin? That you were right about Mother? That I should have defended you? I wanted you to choose me. My voice cracked. Just once, I wanted you to choose me. By humiliating my family? By exposing my mother's past. She tried to destroy everything I built. And now you've destroyed everything she built. He ran his hands through his hair. Do you know what this will do to my father's business? To our family's reputation. A quiet voice behind us made us both jump. The truth rarely destroys anything worth keeping. Celeste stood there, her perfect makeup slightly smeared. She looked smaller somehow, more human. Mother. Nolan started, but she held up a hand. I came from nothing, she said, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. My father was a janitor. My mother cleaned houses. I worked that jewelry counter for 6 years before meeting your father, and I was good at it. But in this world, she gestured to the glittering gala behind us. In this world, the past is a weapon. So you used mine against me, I said. I used whatever I could to protect what I'd built. She met my eyes, just like you did tonight. The difference is, there is no difference. She stepped closer. We're exactly alike, Marin. That's what terrifies me. The truth of it hit me like a physical blow. In trying to prove I wasn't like them, I'd become exactly what I despised. Your father knows everything now, Celeste continued. About my past, about what I did to sabotage your business. He's reevaluating things. Mother, he loves you, Nolan protested. Yes, but love without trust is just another pretty piece of jewelry. All shine, no substance. She turned to me. You've won, Marin. The investors, the showcase, your grandfather's challenge. It's all yours. But tell me, was revenge everything you hoped it would be? I thought about my grandfather's letter, about his challenge to prove myself. Had I proved myself, or had I just proved I could be as ruthless as anyone else? I never wanted revenge, I said quietly. I just wanted to belong.
No.
Nolan's voice was firm. You wanted to win, and now you have. Congratulations. He walked away, leaving me alone with Celeste. We stood in silence, two women who'd fought so hard for acceptance that we'd forgotten what we were fighting for. Your collection, she finally said. The one locked in the display case? The override code is my wedding date. The day I thought I'd finally made it, finally belonged. She smiled sadly. Ironic, isn't it? As she turned to leave, I called after her. Why are you telling me this? Because someone once told me that true legacy isn't about what you have, it's about what you leave behind. She paused. Your grandfather was right about one thing, Marin. You do have potential. Don't waste it proving points to people who've already lost their way. I watched her disappear into the gala, then pulled out my phone. The investment numbers were staggering, more than enough to claim my inheritance. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt empty. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. You okay? I looked at the fountain, remembering simpler times. The water sparkled under the garden lights, each droplet catching and reflecting something different, something true. No, I typed back. But I think I finally understand what Grandpa's challenge was really about. It was never about the money. It was about learning the difference between winning and succeeding, between revenge and redemption, between belonging and becoming. I had some decisions to make. 6 months after the gala, I stood in my grandfather's study, now part of my mother's house. The lawyer placed 2 documents on the desk, proof of my earnings and the inheritance paperwork. Congratulations, Miss Calloway, he said. You've met all conditions of the will. I stared at the papers but didn't reach for them. Instead, I pulled out a 3rd document from my bag. I'd like to make some changes. Mom looked up from her spot by the window. Marin, I'm establishing a foundation, I explained, for young entrepreneurs from underprivileged backgrounds. The inheritance will fund it. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. All of it, except for one piece. I touched the necklace at my throat, the one from my luxury line, redesigned with a new purpose. This design is being mass-produced now. Affordable versions for working women who want something beautiful but practical. Something earned, not inherited. The doorbell rang and Mom went to answer it. She returned looking puzzled, followed by Celeste Granger. I hope I'm not interrupting, Celeste said, looking different in simple slacks and a sweater. Gone was the society matron armor. We were just finishing some paperwork, I said. Yes, I heard about your success. She smiled slightly. Everett and I have been following your company's growth. He's impressed. And you? I'm learning to be impressed by different things these days. She set a small box on the desk, like courage and grace. Inside the box was a worn jewelry price tag from 1985, bearing her employee number. My first sale, she explained. I kept it to remind myself where I came from. Somewhere along the way, I started hiding from it instead. And Nolan? I asked, though I already knew he'd taken a job across the country. Finding his own way, finally. She touched the price tag gently. Sometimes losing everything helps you find what matters. I'm donating the inheritance, I said, surprising myself by sharing this, to help others build something of their own. Your grandfather would be proud. She reached for her purse. And so would mine. He was a janitor, remember? He always said true wealth isn't what you have, it's what you give. As she turned to leave, She paused. The spring charity gala needs a new chairperson. Someone who understands both sides of the jewelry counter. I thought about declining, about maintaining the safe distance I'd built. But maybe bridges were better than walls. I'll think about it, I said. After she left, Mom wrapped an arm around my shoulders. You okay?
Yeah.
I picked up the inheritance paperwork, then the foundation documents. You know, when Grandpa set this challenge, I thought it was about proving myself to everyone else. But it was never about them, was it? Your grandfather had his flaws, Mom said, but he knew what you needed better than you did. Sometimes the hardest person to prove yourself to is yourself. I signed the foundation papers, watching my signature dry. My phone buzzed with a text from Lyle about our latest sales figures, another record month. But those numbers didn't matter as much anymore. Want to get lunch? Mom asked. That new cafe downtown? Actually, I said, gathering my things, I was thinking about that little diner where you and Grandpa used to go. The one with the terrible coffee and the great stories. She smiled, understanding. Perfect. As we left, I glanced at my reflection in the study window. The woman looking back wasn't the same one who'd opened that lawyer's letter a year ago. She was stronger, wiser, and maybe a little scarred. But mostly, she was herself. My phone buzzed again, an email from an unknown address. The subject line read, "From one salesgirl to another." Inside was a list of small jewelry businesses owned by women from humble backgrounds, all struggling to break into the high-end market. I smiled, thinking about bridges and counters and the stories we tell ourselves about who we are. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting better. And sometimes the greatest legacy isn't what you inherit, but what you choose to build.
My name is Luna. I'm a 25-year-old employee. My grandfather, who raised me, passed away 6 months ago. Today is the day when the lawyer will open my grandfather's will. That's why I was visiting my grandfather's house with my sister Susan, who was 4 years older and is my only family. Our parents passed away in an accident 20 years ago, and since then, we were raised by our grandparents. Since my grandmother passed away from an illness a few years ago, my grandfather's spirits have been declining year by year, and he became frequently ill. Out of concern, I lived in an apartment near my grandfather's house and often went back to check on him. "You're a grown woman. It's unbecoming to keep coming back home," my grandfather would say, but he would always laugh cheerfully nonetheless. Then one day, as I went to visit like I usually did, I found my grandfather lying in pain at the entrance. In a panic, I called the ambulance, but my grandfather passed away, just like that. "Hey, what are you daydreaming for? At least prepare some tea." My sister's voice brought me back to reality. "Right. The lawyer will be here soon," I responded and headed to the kitchen. Taking a quick glance, I saw my sister lazily stretching out her legs on the mat and yawning. I could still smell my sister's strong perfume even in the kitchen, a bit away, and I made a face. "She's the same as always," I murmured under my breath, placing the kettle on the stove. My sister has always been the type to only care about herself. Once she hit her teens, she started dyeing her hair as if it were natural. She hung out with the so-called delinquents and was always out and about, demanding money without working. Part-time was a given. Even when she caused trouble and our grandparents had to apologize on her behalf, she was unperturbed. I, being the quiet one, often had to deal with the fallout. She doesn't seem to have changed much even after becoming an adult. She doesn't have a stable job and seems to just be drifting around while working part-time. I knew she had been asking our grandfather for money whenever I wasn't around. It was easy to imagine that she would have found this all too troublesome if it weren't for the inheritance. "Ah, you must be the lawyer. Thanks for coming today." I heard my sister's high-pitched formal voice, indicating that the lawyer had arrived. I hurriedly placed tea leaves into the teapot and headed towards the entrance. "Thank you for coming today." I had met the lawyer at the funeral. His eyes were as kind as my grandfather's. A lawyer's badge shone brightly on his chest. After offering incense in front of my grandfather's portrait, he took a sip of the tea I served and then took out my grandfather's will. It was entrusted to him by my grandfather while he was still alive. The content was as follows. My elder sister Susan was to inherit $20 million in cash, and I, the younger daughter, was to inherit this house and the land it sits on. Upon hearing this, my sister burst out laughing. $20 million in cash for the elder daughter and only an old house for the younger one? How hilarious. It's just right for someone as plain as you. "It's not just the house. There's also the land," I retorted, to which my sister laughed snidely. "Huh? The value of this land in such a God-forsaken place is hardly surprising. Ah, I would have preferred cash, I guess. Grandpa must have had a soft spot for me after all. I can't deny that I am a bit shocked. I suppose my grandfather wanted me to protect his beloved house and land where he spent his life with my grandmother. Huh, a house and land. That's pretty awesome, isn't it?" Brian, my boyfriend, exclaimed in surprise after hearing my story. I shook my head, implying it's not as great as it sounds. Not really. My sister inherited $20 million in cash. That's more impressive. I felt a sense of emptiness saying it out loud. Even though I was being modest, verbalizing it felt like an acknowledgement. Wow, beautiful and have money now. She's the more morose, the better victory. I shot Brian a side glance for his insensitive comment. Realizing his gaffe, he joked, "Your comfort means more to me than money, Luna." Brian has been my boyfriend since I started working. We met at a social event, and being of the same age, we clicked well. I've introduced him to my grandfather and my sister. While he hasn't proposed yet, I have been considering marriage. Today was our first date in a while, and I ended up telling Brian about my inheritance. I suppose it was because I thought he would become my husband someday. I had no idea I would come to regret this. A few days later, I was visiting the family home I had inherited from my grandfather. I had intended to clean and sort out my grandfather's belongings. The property was large, but the house was modest. I figured I could manage it on my own and looked around the house, pondering. It's close to my workplace. Maybe I should move here. Living here leisurely with a cat doesn't sound too bad. There would be no rent to pay, and while there might be maintenance costs for deterioration, I have been working hard and saving, so it shouldn't be a problem. Maybe someday with Brian. Feeling embarrassed at the thought, I shook my head vigorously. I rolled up my sleeves to begin cleaning. Just then, I received a call. My sister's name appeared on my smartphone screen. "Sis, what's up?" "Hey, Luna, having fun all by yourself in that old house?" My sister seemed to be drunk. She always had a unique way of extending her words. But today, it was particularly bad. "Since you're drinking, aren't you? It's still afternoon," I pointed out with a sigh, to which she exaggeratedly sighed back. "Oh, you're such a Miss Goody Two-Shoes." I was right. She had been drinking. "I was thinking about moving here eventually," I answered my sister's question, hoping to end the conversation quickly. "Really? I'm enjoying a suite in a luxury hotel right now." My sister raised her voice in a somewhat exaggerated way. "Guess who I'm with right now?" "I have no idea." "Boring. It's that kind of attitude that'll make Brian dislike you." "What?" "I'm sorry, Luna." I was flabbergasted when Brian's voice took over the line. The sudden intervention of Brian threw me off balance. Dizzying question marks popped up in my head, but I resented my imagination. At this point, a disgusting imagination had been completed in my head. "Surprised, huh?" My sister's mean-spirited voice chimed in. Ever since you introduced him to me, I thought Brian was quite a catch. She rattled off boastfully about how she had been attracted to Brian since I introduced him, how she knew where he worked because of me, and how she had approached him as soon as he left work. He came along readily when she asked. He told her that she was hundreds of times more attractive than me. I listened in stunned silence. Luna, I'm really sorry. The next voice I heard was Brian's again. Tell me it's a mistake. As I tried to utter words that wouldn't come, he spoke again. As a man, I had to take this opportunity. What? I do feel bad about it, but come on, it's impossible to resist a beautiful woman who has $20 million, right? The way he spoke, as if asking me to understand, drained my emotions away. I felt a cold sensation, like my blood was being drained from me. You know what? I don't need a man like you. At my words, I could hear my sister laughing uproariously in the background. The voice on the phone changed back to my sister. Well, that's how it is. And from now on, let's not consider ourselves sisters, okay? I wouldn't want you turning to me just because you're broke. With those words, she ended the call. Overwhelmed by emotions that had lagged behind, all I could do was cry out. 5 years have passed since then. I had a cat in my lap, dozing off in front of my laptop. The cat was also purring contentedly in sleep. Today is my day off, but there is still a bit of work left from what I brought home. Oh no, this won't get the work done. I felt guilty, but I had to move the cat off my lap. Just as I reached out, my phone started to ring. An unfamiliar number was displayed on my smartphone. Thinking it could be work-related, I answered the call without any suspicion. Hello, Luna, long time no see. I instantly knew who it was and froze. The distinctive way of speaking was unmistakably my sister's. It's you, Luna, isn't it? I can tell just from your initial hello. After all, I'm your big sister. 5 years had passed, which should make Susan 34. A smirk formed at the corner of my mouth at her unchanging way of talking. You're just the same. By the way, I came home and there's a hotel standing. Did you sell the house? That's none of your business. Oh, come on, it's quite a grand hotel, huh? You must have made a good chunk of change, huh? Getting fed up, I was about to end the call when she started to chatter about her current situation. According to Susan, she had blown through the inheritance in about 2 years. Now she even had a considerable amount of debt. Even Brian, who she's still hanging around, seemed to be drowning in debt. I was speechless. Honestly, I couldn't care less. So, lend me some money. Against Susan's yelling, I answered calmly. I've always wondered why Grandpa distributed his estate that way. But on the day you took Brian from me and cut ties, I understood. I started talking slowly. 5 years ago, when Brian broke up with me, I was crushed. After crying my heart out, I sat dazed in my room, staring into space. I'm such a fool, as I murmured. Large tears began to spill again. My gaze fell on a painting I had made as a child and had gifted to my grandfather. He had framed it and kept it hanging lovingly. Rising unsteadily, I picked up the painting. Grandpa, when the feelings of nostalgia and loneliness welled up and tears started to come, I felt something drop from the back of the frame. Picking it up, I saw it was a fresh sheet of notepaper addressed to me. I remembered how, when I was little, I used to stick notes on the back of this frame and exchange secret messages with my grandfather. It was like a family journal, really. Knowing that I was to inherit the house, he probably figured I'd find this note. I'm glad I noticed. I shuddered at the thought that I might have left it unnoticed. To Luna. The date on the letter was just before my grandfather passed. I knew you'd definitely notice this letter. Right now, you're probably wondering why I distributed my estate in such a manner. Cash to your sister and an old house and land for you. It may seem like I favored Susan, but that's not the case. Despite any claims of favoritism, I wanted to leave most of my estate to you, who cared for me till the end. I finally understood what had been bothering me. No matter what Grandpa thought more of me, huh? I'm sure I was deeply hurt by Susan's words at that time, despite having loved my grandfather more. A kind of jealousy. I continued to read the letter. But Susan would not be satisfied with a regular division. This child, even as her grandfather, I must admit, she's terribly greedy. Exactly, Grandpa. She even took my boyfriend from me. That's what I want to tell him in my heart. That's why I arranged it this way. If at first glance Susan appears to have received the better deal, she won't pay attention to your share. According to Grandpa's letter, the value of this land in our area is continuously increasing due to ongoing urban development. As of the time I'm writing this, it's not worth Susan's $20 million yet, but the value of this land will surely increase in the future. When I read this far, my eyes widen in surprise. You can live here if you're attached to it, or you can sell it when its value rises enough to make a good profit. All I want is for you to be happy. When I finished conveying the content of the letter, Susan clicked her tongue and said, "Hag." I lived in that house for a while, but when my marriage was settled, I decided to sell the house just like Grandfather's letter said. The land value had risen enough anyway. "I'm never lending you money." Susan seemed frustrated, but as if she had a good idea, she said, "Right. If you want, I can give Brian back to you, so help your sister. It's a good deal, right?" At this moment, I heard something snap inside of me. Enough is enough. You've been taken care of by Grandpa, and yet you haven't shown a hint of gratitude. I despise you for that, and you're not my sister anymore. Besides, I'm already married. I don't need Brian, and I don't even want to see his face. Stay out of my life for good. I said what I needed to say and hung up. I quickly set up call blocking, and my cat on my lap was cowering on the bed. I quickly picked up my cat and said, "I'm sorry." After that, it seems Susan contacted Brian, and they both stormed into our old house. Did they try to return Brian to me? There's a respectable end there now, but they must have misunderstood something and were shouting that they were my relatives, even though I just sold the land and had nothing to do with it. It's simple for those two. I sold the land and an end was built, so I must be the owner of the end. Of course, the staff reported it to the police. The two of them were arrested because they had destroyed several items in the end. Furthermore, it was discovered that they had been committing marriage fraud for money in the past. It seems they'll be sent to prison together. I was also questioned by the police, but I was able to prove that I had no involvement quickly as we were estranged and were released. As my husband, who came to pick me up, and I were walking through the station, we heard screaming and turned our gaze. There were Susan and Brian, who looked completely different. Fortunately, they didn't notice us. Both of them had messy hair, worn-out clothes, and looked nothing like the two people I remember, especially Susan, who never skipped her makeup and fashion, looked even more different. They were probably being moved into a different location. My husband and I silently locked lips as we stood there watching my two beautiful boys dance away, a little downtrodden. I took his hand and we left the police station. "Are you okay?" My husband is always considerate and gave me a gentle gaze. "I'm okay. I have you and this little one." I patted my rather prominent belly as well, smiled back. A new addition to our family is being created in my belly. There is one thing more valuable than money. That and what I hope to show our child. with my husband by my side.
I'm Maya. I was always the type of person to stick to a plan, college, job, save up maybe my own little place I could call mine one day. The irony of me working in a travel agency makes you wonder. I spent around 8 hours surrounded by posters showcasing places that I never visited. It was work, home, sleep, and repeat. Bam! The next thing you know, I got a call from an old college buddy of mine, Jake. Hey Maya, long time no see. Guess what? Throwing a camping trip this weekend. The second I picked up, he blurted out, "You need to come." Yeah, but no buts, Maya. It's just a weekend. You need a break. What's the point of selling dreams if you never live one? He was pushing, knowing I'd cave. All right. Send me the details. I gave in, already regretting my decision as we hung up. But a part of me felt a spark of excitement, something I hadn't felt in a long while. The rest of the week was a blur of preparations. I dug out my old camping gear, bought some new hiking boots, my old ones were a lost cause, and by Friday, I was as ready as I'd ever be. Saturday morning arrived, chilly and clear. I drove to the meeting spot, a little coffee shop where our group was gathering before heading out. Jake was already there, larger than life, greeting everyone with boisterous hellos. He introduced me around. "This is Maya, guys. We went to college together. She's a pro at booking your dream vacation but never takes one herself." The group laughed, and I managed a tight smile. Jake was just like I remembered, always the center of attention. As we set off, the reality of what I'd signed up for hit me. The path was steeper than I expected, the backpack was killing my shoulders, and those new boots felt like a torture device. About an hour in, I was seriously questioning my life choices. That's when I noticed him. Alex. Alex was a friend of a friend, tall with an easy smile, walking alongside me. "First time hiking in a while?" he asked, eyeing my awkward steps. "Is it that obvious?" I gasped a bit. He laughed. "Here, let me help you with your pack. It'll make the climb easier." Reluctantly, I handed it over, feeling a mix of relief and embarrassment. "Thanks, I guess. I'm not as fit as I thought." As we walked, Alex shared stories of his own travels and misadventures. He had this easy way about him that made the hours pass faster. I found myself laughing more than I had in months. By the time we set up camp, I was exhausted but exhilarated. The evening passed with campfire stories and marshmallows. Alex stayed close, and we talked late into the night, the stars our only light. Waking up in a tent wasn't my usual start to a Sunday, but there I was with a stiff back and the chirping of birds outside. The day promised more hiking, and honestly, I was dreading it. Pulling on my boots, which were now slightly less torturous than the day before, I stepped out into the crisp morning air. Alex was already up, brewing coffee over a small camp stove. "Morning, Maya," he said with a smile as I approached. "Morning. Sleep well?" "Better than I expected," I replied, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. "What's that smell?" "Coffee. Thought it might help kickstart the day. Want some?" "God, yes. Thanks," I said, accepting the cup and sipping carefully. The warmth was comforting, and the caffeine started to seep into my bones. As the others began to stir, Jake called us to gather around. "All right, team. Today's trek is a bit tougher, so let's stick together, and hey, no one gets left behind." I glanced at Alex, silently pleading for him to stick close. He seemed to understand and nodded subtly. We started off at a good pace, the trail leading us through denser forest. The terrain was rough with roots and rocks that demanded attention. Alex walked beside me, offering a steady stream of conversation that kept my mind off my aching muscles. "So, Maya, what made you finally say yes to a trip like this?" he asked as we navigated a particularly tricky stretch. I laughed. Jake wouldn't stop nagging. He said I was becoming part of the furniture at the office. Guess I needed to prove him wrong. The path eventually opened up to a beautiful clearing with a view of the mountains beyond. We stopped for a break, everyone catching their breath and taking in the scenery. I dropped my pack with a thud and flopped down beside it. Alex sat down next to me, handing me a water bottle. "You're doing great, Maya." "Seriously, thanks, Alex. This is tougher than I thought. But I'm glad I came," I admitted, looking around at the natural beauty. We spent a few moments in comfortable silence, just enjoying the peace of the wilderness. It was new for me, this quiet companionship, and I found myself not wanting the moment to end. As we got up to continue, Alex offered his hand to help me up. "Ready for the next leg?" "As ready as I'll ever be," I said, accepting his hand. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of greenery and occasional wildlife sightings. As we packed up to head back to camp, Alex lingered behind with me. "Hey, Maya, there's a small waterfall not far from here. Want to check it out before we head back?" I hesitated, my body screaming for rest, but then I nodded. "Sure, why not? Lead the way." That little detour, just the two of us, felt like an adventure within an adventure. The waterfall was breathtaking, a hidden gem tucked away from the beaten path. Standing there, watching the water cascade down, I felt something shift inside me. Maybe it was the raw beauty of the place, or maybe it was the person by my side, but I knew I would remember this moment for a long time. Life has a funny way of turning your plans upside down. 2 years after that camping trip, Alex and I got married. It was a simple wedding, nothing too fancy but filled with joy. Well, mostly. His mum, Mrs. Collins, stood there with her lips pinched tight, barely cracking a smile. She never thought I was good enough for her son and never missed a chance to let me know. Fast forward 3 more years, and Alex came home one day with a big idea. "Maya, we should move in with my mum. Since Dad passed, she's all alone in that big house, and I worry about her." I was chopping vegetables for dinner and almost nicked my finger with the knife. "Live with your mum? Alex, you know how she feels about me." He sighed, scrubbing a hand through his hair. "I know it's not ideal, but she's my mum. We need to look after her." The thought of living under the same roof as Mrs. Collins made my stomach turn, but I loved Alex. "Okay, we'll try it for you." The day we moved in, Mrs. Collins greeted us with a forced smile and a list of house rules she'd written down. I tried to keep things light, but the tension was thick. That evening, while Alex was setting up our bedroom, his mum cornered me in the kitchen. "Maya, I hope you understand that this is still my home. I expect certain standards to be maintained," she said, eyeing the way I was organizing the pantry. I nodded, keeping my voice steady. "I'll do my best, Mrs. Collins," she huffed. "Please at least try to keep things clean and don't think you can just lounge around all day. There's plenty to be done." Her words stung, but I swallowed the hurt. "I'll make sure everything's up to your standards." The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Living with Mrs. Collins was as tough as I had feared. She had a comment for everything I did, from the way I cooked meals, "Too spicy, Maya, not everyone likes to burn their tongue," to how I did the laundry. "You're folding those sheets all wrong." One particularly rough day, Alex came home to find me scrubbing the kitchen floor, tears of frustration welling up. "Hey, what's wrong?" he asked, kneeling beside me. "It's just your mum. I'm trying, Alex, but it feels like she's never happy with anything I do." He wrapped an arm around my shoulders. "I'm sorry, Maya. I see how hard you're trying. Let me talk to her, okay?" The talk must have had some effect, because Mrs. Collins backed off a bit. She was still cold, but the constant criticism slowed down, slowly, very slowly. We settled into a tense routine. Then came the discussion about children. I wanted to start a family, but month after month nothing happened. I was worried and brought it up one evening while Alex and I were washing dishes. "Alex, do you think there's something wrong? Should we see a doctor?" He didn't look at me, focusing on a stubborn spot on a plate. "I don't know, Maya. Let's not rush things. These things take time." "But it's been years," I pressed, feeling the sting of tears. He put down the dish and took my hands. "Hey, let's just be patient, okay? We have a lot on our plates right now." As tough as things were, I found small ways to make that old house feel like home. I started a garden, something I'd always wanted to do. Mrs. Collins even complimented it once, though it was more of a grunt than actual praise. One afternoon, while I was pruning the roses, she came out and watched me for a few minutes. "You have a knack for this gardening thing," she remarked almost begrudgingly. I smiled, wiping sweat from my brow. "Thanks, Mrs. Collins. It's nice to hear that from you." One day, Alex asked me to quit my job, and I unexpectedly agreed, becoming a housewife. Every day was a juggle between household chores, taking care of Mrs. Collins, and dealing with the undercurrents of a changing family dynamic. Alex's behavior had started to shift too. He was staying late at work, often too tired to talk when he got home, and on many nights he just crashed in the spare room, mumbling about needing to catch up on sleep. One evening, while I was fixing a leaky faucet, Alex's sister Lydia dropped by unannounced. "Still playing the devoted wife in this dreary old tomb," Lydia sneered as she looked around the dimly lit kitchen. "It's not that bad, Lydia. It'll grow on you," I shot back, trying not to let her get under my skin. She laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the high ceilings. "It's just like you, isn't it? Old-fashioned and lonely. Fits you perfectly." Before I could respond, she turned to her mother. "Mum, I need some money. The usual stuff, you know how it is." Without a moment's hesitation, Mrs. Collins pulled out her checkbook and wrote her a check, her hand shaky but determined. It wasn't long after Lydia's visit that Mrs. Collins's health took a turn for the worse. One afternoon, she called me into her room, her voice weaker than usual. "Maya, can you help me with my bath? I can't do it myself today." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Of course, Mrs. Collins." As I helped her, careful and gentle, her usual sharpness melted away. By the end, tears were rolling down her cheeks. "Thank you, dear. My own daughter, she won't even help me." "Don't mention it. It's okay," I said, helping her back to her room. That day marked a change in our relationship. She started treating me more like a daughter than a reluctant houseguest. But as we grew closer, Alex grew more distant. One day, I overheard him on the phone talking about an apartment he had bought near his work. Curious, I asked him about it later. "Show me the apartment sometime," I suggested, trying to keep my tone light. "It's just a regular place, Maya. Nothing to see. It's not a museum," he snapped, shutting down the conversation abruptly. His coldness stung, but what hurt more came a few days later when Mrs. Collins called me to her side, whispering with urgency. "He bought that apartment with my money, Maya. Put it in my name, even uses my savings for the bills." There, I felt my heart sink. Why would he do that? She shook her head, her eyes sad. "I don't know, dear, but be careful. There's more going on with Alex than we know." Mrs. Collins, my unlikely ally through recent tough times, had begun to see me as more than just the woman her son had married. Maybe it was the countless days spent together, or maybe it was the genuine help I showed, but she started treating me kindly, and that was new. One lazy, sunlit afternoon as we sat in the parlour, I broached a topic I'd been mulling over for weeks. "Mrs. Collins, have you ever thought about sprucing up this old place?" She looked around, her gaze lingering on peeling wallpaper and faded photographs. "I suppose it could use a bit of touching up," she admitted, her voice softening with a rare hint of nostalgia. Encouraged, I pushed forward. "I was thinking more than just touching up. What if we really changed things around, made it brighter, more lively?" She raised an eyebrow, a spark of interest in her eyes. "What did you have in mind?" "Maybe some new paint, fixing up the old furniture, getting some new curtains. It could really lighten up the place," I said, warming to the idea. Mrs. Collins nodded slowly. "That sounds nice. It's been ages since anything changed around here. Do you think you could handle that?" "I'd love to," I assured her, excitement building in my chest. The next day, armed with paint samples and fabric swatches, I set about transforming the old mansion. The work was hard, but it felt good to be doing something tangible, something that would breathe new life into these tired walls. As I was stripping wallpaper in the dining room, Mrs. Collins came in, leaning on her cane. "You're really going all out, aren't you?" she observed, watching as I scraped off layers of the past. "I am," I replied, smiling despite the sweat on my brow. "This place is going to feel completely different." She chuckled, a sound so rare I almost didn't recognize it. At this rate, I might not even recognize my own home. Days turned into weeks, and the house slowly transformed. The dark, drab colours gave way to bright, welcoming tones. Old, musty carpets were removed, revealing beautiful hardwood floors that we polished until they shone. Alex was hardly around, his visits growing even more infrequent. But one evening, he came home as I was draping new curtains in the living room. "What the hell is all this? What have you done to my house?" he demanded, his eyes darting around the changed space. At that moment, Mrs. Collins entered the room. "It's my house, Alex. I want it to be nice. Ma is doing a wonderful job." Alex looked between us, his frustration palpable. "Fine," he snapped, before stomping off to other parts of the house. Despite his reaction, we pressed on. Mrs. Collins and I picked out new furniture, replacing the old heavy pieces with lighter, more modern choices that still respected the house's character. Every new addition seemed to lift her spirits and mine too. Life had just started settling down after the renovation when Mrs. Collins's health took a sudden turn for the worse. One morning, I found her slumped over in her chair, barely able to speak. The panic button was hit, and within hours we were in the emergency room where doctors buzzed around her, finally declaring she'd suffered a stroke. She was whisked away for treatment, and I found myself pacing the sterile, cold hallways of the hospital alone. Alex didn't show up, neither did Lydia. Mrs. Collins spent a couple of weeks in the hospital, but it was only me who visited every day. I'd sit by her bedside, holding her hand, talking about the house, trying to keep her spirits up while she stared blankly at the walls. Her body was weak, her spirit weaker. When she was finally discharged, she was a shell of her former self, confined to her bed. Her movements were slow and her speech slurred. It was on that first day back at home when Alex and Lydia decided to show their faces. They walked past me in the hallway straight to Mrs. Collins's room, where they began discussing her assets as though she wasn't lying right there. "Mum's got that savings account. We should look into that," Lydia was saying, flipping through some papers she shouldn't have had. "Yeah, and the house. We need to start thinking about what to do with it," Alex chimed in, not even trying to lower his voice. Mrs. Collins's eyes filled with tears, her hands trembling. Seeing her so vulnerable broke my heart. I couldn't hold back anymore. "Can you two stop? She's right here listening to all this." Alex turned on me, his face twisted in annoyance. "This is family business, Maya. Stay out of it." Lydia scoffed. "Yeah, just because you play nurse doesn't mean you have a say." Their words stung, but I wasn't about to let them bully me or her. "She is my family too, and I'm not going to let you two treat her like this." From that day on, I threw myself into caring for her. I read up on stroke recovery, learned exercises to help her regain mobility, and massaged her limbs to keep them from stiffening. Slowly, she started responding. It was painstaking and slow, but progress was made. She began eating on her own, a stubborn set to her jaw whenever she'd attempt to walk with my support. Alex and Lydia watched this recovery with thinly veiled dismay. It seemed every step forward for Mrs. Collins was a step away from whatever plans they'd concocted for her assets. One evening, as I helped Mrs. Collins back into bed after a particularly strenuous set of exercises, she looked up at me with more clarity than I'd seen in weeks. "Thank you, Maya," she murmured, her voice still weak but determined. "You're my real family." It had been a peaceful year in some ways, the mansion slowly feeling more like a home under my care. That peace shattered the morning I found Mrs. Collins passed away in her sleep. It was a quiet exit, fitting for the gentle side of her I'd come to know. The funeral was a surreal blur. I was greeting mourners in the parlor, still in a daze, when Alex walked in. The shock came not just from seeing him, he'd been increasingly absent over the past year, but from the woman who accompanied him, holding a toddler with another child tugging at her skirt. "This is my wife Linda, and these are my children." Alex introduced them without a flinch. His words cut through the murmurs of the crowd like a knife. Then he turned to me, his voice cold and sharp. "Maya, you need to leave. We'll be moving in." I stood there, stunned, trying to process his words when Lydia's laughter broke through my shock. Finally, this house will see some proper life again. Before I could respond, the notary, Mr. Hanson, called us together for the reading of the will. We moved into the living room, a heavy tension settling over us. Mr. Hanson opened his briefcase, pulling out the documents. "Let's proceed with the reading of Marjorie Collins's last will and testament." Alex and Lydia positioned themselves prominently, as if ready to claim their victory. I remained standing by the window, feeling the weight of the moment. "I, Marjorie Collins, declare this my last will and testament," Mr. Hanson read. "To Maya, who has been more than a daughter to me, I leave all my property, including the mansion and all my financial assets. Furthermore, the apartment purchased by my son Alex will also revert to Maya, as it was acquired with funds provided by me." The silence that followed was palpable. Alex's face turned red, his fists clenched. "This is ridiculous. You must have forced her into this, Maya." Lydia was quick to join in, her voice harsh and accusing. "You're nothing but a gold digger. Mum was old and confused. You took advantage of her." I felt my heart pounding, but I kept my calm. "I didn't force anyone. I cared for her when you wouldn't." Mr. Hanson cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses. "There is also a video statement from Marjorie, if you will," he said, setting up a laptop. The screen flickered and Mrs. Collins appeared, looking frail but resolute. "If you are hearing this, I am no longer here. I have left everything to Maya. In these past years, she has shown me kindness, compassion, and loyalty more than my own children ever did. This is my thank you to her, my final wish." The room was silent as the video ended. Alex looked as if he might explode with fury, while Lydia seemed to shrink, her earlier bravado evaporating. Alex turned to Mr. Hanson, his voice desperate. "We can contest this, right? There's got to be a way." Mr. Hanson closed the folder with a snap. "You can try, but Marjorie was of sound mind when she made these decisions. Everything is legally binding." After everything settled down, the first thing I did was finalize my divorce from Alex. The house, the apartment where he'd set up his little fantasy life, they were all legally mine now. Alex ended up drifting with his new family, bouncing from one rental to another. I heard about it from mutual friends, the whispers of his downfall circulating back to me, but I didn't take any pleasure in it. Lydia, too, had her own set of troubles. After betting on inheriting her mother's money and losing, she was swamped with debt. One afternoon, she showed up at my doorstep, her face haggard, her usual brashness gone. "Maya, I need help," she said straight out, no beating around the bush. "I've got nothing left." I looked at her, remembering all the harsh words, the sneers. "I can't help you, Lydia. You made your choices." She stared at me, a mix of anger and desperation in her eyes. "You're enjoying this, aren't you? Watching us fall apart?" I shook my head, feeling a twinge of pity despite everything. "I don't enjoy any of this, Lydia, but you need to sort out your own mess." I decided to transform the old mansion into a small private hotel for tourists, calling it Marjorie's in memory of Mrs. Collins. It seemed fitting to honour her this way, keeping her love for the house alive by filling it with life and laughter again. I managed everything from renovations to marketing, pouring my heart into every detail, making sure that everything was perfect. One evening, sitting in the garden Mrs. Collins loved so much, I allowed myself to really think about the future. I planned expansions, special events, community activities. Marjorie's was not just going to be a hotel, it was going to be a vital part of the community, a place that brought people together.
Located in the rolling hills and winding stream of Huntington Town, I was far away from city life. The old house we lived in had wooden floors that creaked and narrow windows where you could see for acres. It was like a world of its own. My story started in the comfort of family love. Money-wise, my parents weren't rich, but I grew up in a family full of kindness and heartwarming wisdom. His hands, weathered from years of working in a small town as a carpenter, were rough, but he also had the gentlest touch. He was a father who did more than craft wood. He was an example of how dedication and humility move mountains. As a schoolteacher, my mother decorated our home with books and stories as she stirred the depths of not only me, but prepared big dreams. It was a small town life in our part of the world. In these days, people used to entertain by visiting their neighbors, and no event was more exciting than the physical spaced events of our lives. I loved this life. Little things made me happy. The smell of dirt after rain or crunching leaves under my feet, and waking up to birds gladly singing a fry in the first rays. I met James for the first time at a community library. Different from anyone I'd ever met. A metropolitan visitor who exudes sophistication while still retaining an approachable front. His family were pillars of the business community, their money and influence stretching beyond the city's towers. In a world full of pretentious dudes, I was secretly pissed off about it. But James and his just happy to be here smile news flailing around, like they knew their personal attitude were kind of adorable. Our initial conversations were cautious, like two worlds carefully getting to know each other. He talked about city life, the fast pace, endless opportunities, and dazzling lights. I shared stories of my town, the annual harvest festival, peaceful walks by the stream, and our close-knit community. In those early days, we often met at an old park bench by the lake where we would talk for hours. The lake, with its calm waters reflecting the changing colors of the sky, witnessed our growing connection, weaving our different worlds into one. "Elizabeth," James said to me one evening. His voice changed with a vulnerability I had not seen before. "I have always been surrounded by people who care more about wealth and status, but with you, I found a peace I didn't know existed. You show me a different way of life, one that's real and full of warmth." His words stirred something deep inside me. James, where we come from doesn't define us. It's who we are when we're together that matters. You've given me a new view on life, opening my eyes to dreams I never dared to have. As our relationship grew, James told me about his family, especially his mother. She was elegant but had very high expectations. He spoke of her with respect, but also with concern. "She has her own ideas about who I should be with. I'm just worried about how she'll react to us." I reached out, taking his hand and feeling a slight tremble. "We'll face that together," I assured him. Love isn't about backgrounds or expectations. It's about two people who choose each other against all odds. The date James proposed was simple, just like our love. No grand gestures, just a heartfelt promise of a life together. As I looked into his eyes full of hope and love, I knew this was just the beginning. The evening I was set to meet James's family, I was very nervous. Their grand mansion loomed large as we approached, a reminder of the different worlds James and I came from. James held my hand, giving me a reassuring look. "Just be yourself, Elizabeth. That's all you need to be." I smiled weakly, trying to calm my nerves. "I just hope your mom doesn't think I'm out of place." James sighed, a hint of concern in his eyes. "Mom can be a bit much. Just remember, I'm here with you." As we entered the fancy dining room, James's mother, a tall woman with a stern look, greeted us. Her eyes quickly scanned me, a flicker of disapproval crossing her face. So this is the young lady who has captured my son's heart. Interesting choice. Dinner was elaborate, with dishes I couldn't even name. James's mother, ever the gracious host, offered me a plate with a forced smile. I suppose these dishes might be a bit too sophisticated for your taste, Elizabeth. We can get something simpler if you'd prefer. I felt embarrassed but managed a polite decline. No, thank you. I'm always eager to try new things. As the evening went on, her comments became more pointed. She eyed my dress, a simple but neat outfit, and continued to make subtle remarks. I had thought it was appropriate. Is that what passes for evening wear in your town? It must be challenging to find good clothes on a modest budget. James tried to change the subject, but his mother was relentless. Tell me, Elizabeth, what do your parents do? It's always fascinating to learn about different walks of life. I answered, feeling her judgment. My father is a carpenter, and my mother is a schoolteacher. Oh, how quaint, she replied, her voice dripping with condescension. Hard-working people, I'm sure, but I suppose they couldn't offer you much in the way of a financial head start. The meal continued with her taking jabs at my small-town upbringing, my parents' humble jobs, and even my salary, which she somehow knew about. Each comment was polite, but sharp enough to hurt. James was visibly uncomfortable, and his attempts to defend me only seemed to amuse her more. As we left, James's father, Richard, pulled me aside and offered a kind smile. Elizabeth, you handled yourself well. Don't let her get to you. She'll come around. In the car, James apologized profusely. I'm so sorry, Elizabeth. I didn't think she'd be this harsh. I sighed, feeling a mix of hurt and determination. It's okay, James. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I love you, and that's what matters. That night, as I lay in bed, the sting of his mother's words lingered. But beneath the hurt, a resolve was building. This was more than just about fitting in. It was a test of our love and my strength, and I was ready to face it head-on. As the wedding day approached, the air was thick with excitement and growing tension. Shirley, who had taken it upon herself to oversee the preparations, seemed to find pleasure in belittling my ideas and choices at every turn. One afternoon, while discussing the wedding plans with James and his mother, the topic of the wedding dress came up. I had chosen a simple yet elegant gown that I felt reflected my personality. James's mother, however, had other ideas. That dress, Elizabeth, it's so plain. Don't you want to make a statement on your big day? After all, you're marrying into the family, she said, her voice laced with a patronizing tone. James squeezed my hand under the table, giving me a supportive look. Mom, Elizabeth looks beautiful in that dress. It's her choice, and it's perfect. But his mother was relentless. Oh, James, let's be realistic. This is a high-profile event. People expect a certain standard. Elizabeth, dear, you should consider something more fitting of our family's status. I tried to keep my voice steady, though her words stung. I appreciate your concern, but I really love my dress. It's special to me. She waved her hand dismissively. Well, it's your day, I suppose. But remember, it's not just about you. It's about how you represent us, too. As the days went by, her comments became more frequent and hurtful. Marian criticized the flower arrangements, the menu choices, and even the invitations. Each remark was a subtle dig at my background and my inability to meet her high standards. James and I often talked about this late into the night. I can't believe she's being so difficult, James would say, frustration clear in his voice. I wish she could just see how amazing you are and how happy you make me. I would lie there in his arms, feeling a mix of love and sorrow. I knew it wouldn't be easy marrying into your family, but I didn't expect it to be this hard. The wedding day dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the turmoil inside me. My parents and I had worked hard to make everything perfect despite Marian's constant criticisms. As I dressed in my simple but elegant gown, I hoped the day would pass without incident. The ceremony was beautiful, filled with love and heartfelt vows. James's eyes shone with affection and promise as we said our vows. However, looming over the joyous occasion was the apprehension of the reception to follow, especially the speeches. As expected, Marian took the microphone, commanding the room's attention. The air was thick with expectation as she began to speak. "Ladies and gentlemen," she started, her voice loud and clear. "Today we have gathered to witness the union of my son James with Elizabeth, a person from a different circle." Whispers spread through the guests, and I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. She continued, her words sharp and unyielding. "While some may commend James for his charitable heart in lifting a beggar from the streets, we must be cautious. It's essential to keep our family's reputation and standards high, not let them be diluted by those who are clearly freeloaders, seeking to elevate their status by clinging to a family of higher standing." The room fell into a stunned silence. My parents looked at me, their faces a mix of shock and hurt. James's face was a mask of disbelief and anger. The guests, a mix of our friends and James's high society acquaintances, looked on uncomfortably, unsure of how to react. My heart sank and a deep shame washed over me. Her words were not just insults. They were meant to belittle and humiliate me in front of everyone we cared about. As she finished her speech with a forced toast to our future, the applause was hesitant and quiet. The room was wrapped in an awkward silence, the joy of the occasion spoiled by her venomous words. James stood up, his voice trembling slightly. "I'm sorry, Elizabeth. This isn't what I wanted." His eyes were filled with love and sorrow. I looked around at the shocked faces of our guests, feeling incredibly humiliated. Her words cast a heavy shadow over what was supposed to be the happiest day of our lives. The tension lingered after James's mother's harsh speech. Then his grandmother, Mrs. Joyce, a respected and authoritative figure in the family, requested the microphone. Her composed demeanor and serious expression immediately drew everyone's attention. "Good evening," she began, her voice clear and firm. "I have something important to say. Elizabeth, you have faced unfair criticism today. Criticism that no one deserves, especially not on their wedding day." I looked up in surprise, and James beside me seemed equally astonished. Mrs. Joyce then turned to Shirley. "It seems we have forgotten our own past and where we come from. Let me remind everyone here, especially you, that before you were the lady of this house, you were a maid working under this very roof. It was here that you met your husband." A hush fell over the room. James's mother's face turned pale, her eyes widening in shock and embarrassment. Mrs. Joyce continued, her tone firm. "So for a former maid to stand here and scorn someone for their humble beginnings is not only ironic, but deeply hypocritical." I could hardly believe what I was hearing. The room was silent, every guest hanging on to Mrs. Joyce's every word. You, who rose from poverty, should be the last person to judge or belittle another based on their background. We should be proud of Elizabeth's integrity and strength, not taunt her for it. The guests shifted uncomfortably, and whispers began to circulate. Shirley sat motionless, the impact of Mrs. Joyce's words clear on her face. In this family, we value character over wealth, kindness over status. Elizabeth exemplifies these values, and I am proud to welcome her into our family. Mrs. Joyce concluded, her gaze softening as she looked at me. The room erupted into applause, a stark contrast to the earlier muted response. Shirley sat there completely humbled, her earlier arrogance replaced by a visible sense of shame. I didn't feel sorry for her, James whispered to me. I never expected Grandma to stand up for us like this. I squeezed his hand, feeling a mix of relief and gratitude. She's amazing. The rest of the evening felt lighter, the air cleared by Mrs. Joyce's honest defense. Guests approached with warm congratulations and sincere smiles. I felt like they were all on my side, and it felt great. As we left the reception hand in hand, I felt a renewed sense of confidence and belonging. Mrs. Joyce's words had changed everything, breaking the cruel plans of a not-so-smart woman. The days after the wedding were filled with unspoken tension in James's family. It all came to a head during a family meeting at Mrs. Joyce's house, where the air was thick with expectation and apprehension. As we gathered in the grand living room, Mrs. Joyce began without hesitation, her voice firm and unwavering. What happened at the wedding cannot be overlooked. The way you spoke to Elizabeth was disgraceful. She addressed Shirley directly, her eyes sharp. James's mother, usually so composed, looked smaller somehow, her usual confidence diminished. Joyce, I've already apologized to Elizabeth, she said, her voice tinged with a hint of defiance. It's not just about an apology, Mrs. Joyce retorted. Your actions reflect on this entire family. You've become accustomed to a lifestyle funded by the family's money without appreciating its value. James's father nodded in agreement, his expression serious. My mother is right. You've lost sight of what's important. Mrs. Joyce then laid out her decision, each word deliberate and clear. I've decided to cut off the financial support you've been receiving. It's time you start contributing to this family instead of just taking. You'll need to find a job and learn to live within your means. The shock on Shirley's face was evident. She turned to her husband, seeking support. You can't agree with this. She can't just cut me off like this. But Richard surprised her. I stand with my mother on this. You've gone too far this time. It's for your own good. Shirley's eyes filled with anger and disbelief, her usual poise crumbling under the weight of her new reality. James, who had been silent, spoke up, his voice steady. Mom, Grandma's decision is harsh, but it's fair. You need to understand the impact of your words and actions. I sat there watching the scene unfold, feeling a mix of sympathy and relief. James squeezed my hand under the table, silently supporting me. The meeting ended with James's mother in a state of shock, slowly realizing her situation. She was clearly used to living off her family, and the thought of working gave her a headache. I could barely contain a chuckle as we left. James leaned in close. I never thought I'd see the day when Mom would be at a loss for words. But maybe this is what she needs to change. I nodded, feeling a cautious hope for the future. Perhaps this will be a new beginning for her, for all of us. The family reckoning had been tough but necessary. It was a pivotal moment that promised to reshape the dynamics within James's family, hopefully for the better. The honeymoon was a welcome escape for James and me. As we walked along the sunrise beaches, the soothing sound of the waves provided much-needed relief from the recent family turmoil. One evening, as we watched the sunset, James wrapped his arm around me. I'm sorry our wedding turned into such a drama, Elizabeth. I wish things had been different. I leaned into him, feeling the warmth of his embrace. It's okay, James. It wasn't your fault. What matters is we're together now, away from all that stress. James sighed, looking out over the ocean. Yeah, but when we go back, we'll have to face the reality of my mom's situation. It's going to be tough for her. I nodded, understanding his concern. Maybe this will be a chance for her to grow, to see things from a different perspective. We spend our days exploring and our nights talking about our future. The challenges we had faced seemed to strengthen our bond, reaffirming our love for each other. On our last night, as we packed our bags, James looked thoughtful. "You know, Elizabeth, everything that happened made me realize how important you are to me. I can't imagine going through life with anyone else." I smiled, touched by his words. "I feel the same, James. We've been through a lot, but it's only made our relationship stronger. We can handle whatever comes our way as long as we're together." As we headed back home, I felt ready to face whatever the future held, knowing we had each other. I felt a sense of peace. The honeymoon had not only been a break from the chaos, but also a time for us to strengthen our bond and prepare for the new chapter in our lives. We were returning to a changed reality, but we were doing it together, stronger and more united than ever. The future was uncertain, but I was ready to face it with James by my side. Coming back from our honeymoon, James and I were unsure of what awaited us at his family home. The car ride was quiet, both of us lost in our thoughts about the new family dynamics. As we arrived, the first thing we noticed was the absence of James's mother. Inside, we were greeted by his grandmother, Mrs. Joyce, who wore a knowing smile. "Welcome back, you two. I suppose you're wondering about the changes here," she said, her tone light, but with an undercurrent of seriousness. "Yes, where's Mom?" James asked, looking around. Mrs. Joyce took a deep breath, her smile still in place. "Well, after you left, Shirley caused quite a scene, demanding that I restore her financial support. When I refused, she decided to leave. She's now living in a small apartment, and from what I hear, is looking for a job." James and I exchanged glances, the news sinking in. It was a drastic change from the luxurious life she was used to. "And there's more," Mrs. Joyce continued, leaning in as if to share a secret. "Your father is considering a divorce. He's had enough of her antics. It seems like she finally pushed him too far." "Well, she brought it upon herself," James said, his expression a mix of shock and relief. "I can't believe it. I knew things would change, but this is more than I expected." I reached out, touching his arm. "It's a lot to take in, but maybe this is for the best. A chance for everyone to start fresh on a more honest footing." Dinner that night was oddly serene. The absence of James's mother was felt, but not in the way we had anticipated. The conversation was more open, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like there was a real sense of family. As we drove home later that evening, James was pensive. "I always hoped for a change, but I didn't expect it to happen like this. It's going to be a big adjustment for Mom," James said, breaking the silence. I nodded, feeling the weight of his words. "It's a tough situation, but maybe it's a necessary step for her to grow, and for your dad too, to find some peace. Sometimes change is needed for people to truly see what matters." The ride home was reflective, the quiet only broken by the hum of the car engine. We both sat lost in our thoughts, contemplating the new reality we were returning to. The family we left before the honeymoon was not the same one we were coming back to. It was a sobering thought, but in many ways, a hopeful one. As we drove through the familiar streets, I thought about how much had changed in such a short time. James's mother, who had always been a looming figure of control and criticism, was now facing a reality without the financial cushion she had relied on for so long. It was a dramatic shift, but one that might lead to her personal growth. Perhaps, without the comfort of easy money, she would learn to appreciate the smaller things in life and understand the value of hard work and humility. James's father, on the other hand, seemed ready to break free from the toxic dynamics that had ruled their marriage. His decision to consider a divorce was shocking, but also held the promise of peace and a fresh start. For years, he had been caught in the crossfire of his wife's demands and expectations. Now he had the chance to find happiness on his terms, without the constant strain of living up to someone else's standards. We were not returning to be with the same family. There was a whole other set of emotions that it brought up. Sadness for the pain and disruption, but a glimmer of hope towards something better. Change hurt, sure, but change was where the better life, our lives, lay in wait for us. We were not afraid of it. When we pulled back into our driveway, James turned to me with passion and love in his eyes. Whatever happens, we will face it with apprehension. Now we have the opportunity to forge something different, something better. This made me smile with a new sense of assurance. Yes, we will. We are no strangers to having been through hardship, and it has only made us tougher. So here we fight on with all of our might. It does not matter how hard it is, we are strong enough to go through it. Day 32. We got out of the car holding hands saying, "Bring it." I had no clue what was waiting for me except that whatever it is, I better be prepared because with James there by my side to guide and protect me, we are going to make one hell of a team. We would face this new chapter side by side, taking everything it had to throw at us, and only coming out stronger on the other end. When Julie, my mother-in-law, called me after being only a week back from an overseas trip, I was shocked to the core. She was talking fast and said that we were going to get a $100,000 windfall, which purportedly we already had stashed away. It took a minute of confusion, and I tried to think back on any recent time that amount had gone into my savings. As a freelance jewelry designer, I have savings for emergencies, but rarely carry large sums of cash, and my bank card was with me the entire time. Typically, nobody else is able to withdraw that amount from my account. He told me to get it from the sideboard drawer, so I did. Frag me. People are just like, "You're fine, and you guys are doing good, so it's okay." Her words left me bewildered. Before I could ask another question, she thanked me sincerely and suggested that she might call on me for further financial assistance in the future while ending the conversation between us. I had a question mark about the missing $100,000 until my husband Larry came home and provided an explanation. 1 month later, Julie called me incessantly. I was just ignoring it at first, but then the ringing became so persistent that I answered. Naturally, the sight of over 50 missed calls on my phone was disconcerting. Julie's loud voice came on the line when I answered, accusing me of ignoring her. The way she said it made me feel as if I had wronged her by not telling, but to be honest, and without sounding extra petty or anything, that was just her making an assumption. The 37-year-old busy, child-wanting freelance jewelry designer called Polly, and my equally hard-working husband Larry. So he quit his corporate job and now helps me run a growing design business. We were married young, before I was doing much of anything in the field, and most everything had to come from the dependable paycheck Larry brought home. Today, as we have grown our business, it is no longer the same roles and responsibilities that dictate us. Even new challenges in the form of some family members twisting their perception about money unsolicited. By 34, I was in full swing with my own jewelry label, so it made sense for me to become more organized as there were long days ahead. My business began to grow, and Larry, who was doing moderately well at his company, just on the verge of getting a promotion, decided it was time for him to take a leap. He gave up his exec job and, in order to work with me, applied extraordinary management ability into our business. We both started getting contracts with massive international brands, and it completely changed our work life as well personal life. However, success also brought new problems, notably with Larry's mother, Julie. She lived alone and saw our lives as luxurious, often asking us for money. "You always seem to be living so lavishly. I'm jealous," she would say. My job required me to attend product launches and dinners with executives, which Julie saw as fun outings. Her requests for money became more personal over time. "I'm going to throw a party for my friend soon. Can you give me some money for it?" she asked once. Even though it looked like we could afford it, keeping up our business image was expensive and full of obligations. We weren't living in luxury. These were necessary parts of our work. Julie, full of envy and sarcasm, didn't understand our expenses. Dressed up beautifully and eating at expensive places, she would say, "I envy you," despite my repeated refusals. Larry, being her son, would sometimes give in to her demands. If giving her a little money keeps her quiet, then it's worth it, he'd argue, finding it easier to appease her than have our work disrupted. But Julie's demands only grew. Recently, she wanted a new dress for an upcoming gathering. Just the other day, Julie came over and pestered Larry. "Wouldn't a three-piece suit work? We've been asked to buy clothes before," she said. There might be cheaper options, but what Julie wants is certainly not cheap. I explained to Julie that it was a fancy party, and she couldn't be the only one in old clothes. She also insisted on a matching bag, which left us frustrated. To handle her frequent requests, Larry had set up a credit card in Julie's name for her expenses. At first, she overspent a lot, and Larry had to warn her. Even though he asked her to tell us before making big purchases, she kept spending too much. This constant demand for money left both Larry and me exhausted, trying to support family while keeping our business stable. I found an exquisite ring and couldn't resist buying it, though I regret not telling you first. Unfortunately, the bill was huge, Julie said. If spending is going to be this uncontrolled, maybe it's best to take back the card. We just can't cover these costs, Larry said. The credit card was in Julie's name, but Larry was the one managing and paying the bills. Julie treated the card as if it had no limit, not realizing every purchase had to be paid for since the money wasn't coming directly from her. She kept using it freely. To control her spending, Larry set a limit on her card. Julie stormed into our home one day, frustrated. "What the heck? I couldn't pay for my shopping the other day. Why?" she complained. Larry explained that her excessive spending was straining our finances, so we had to lower her limit. "It's still enough, right?" Larry asked, trying to keep the peace. But Julie protested. "You two are still dressing up and going to fancy places. How's what I'm doing any different?" Julie thought our activities were just for fun. "It's part of our job, Julie," I explained. "If that's a job, then what I'm doing isn't any different. It's unfair that only you two get to have all the fun," she argued. While it's true that our work involves attending events in luxurious venues, these are professional obligations, not leisure activities. Despite her misunderstandings, setting a limit on Julie's credit card seemed to calm things down. Occasionally, Julie would visit and complain to Larry, but overall, life continued without major disruptions. As the year ended, an exciting opportunity came up. A foreign brand manufacturer approached me with a proposal to expand our business by moving overseas. This prospect thrilled me as it could elevate me to the ranks of top-tier designers. Larry, ever supportive as my manager, was all for it. "It's a chance we have to take," he affirmed. However, the idea of moving abroad brought a new concern: Julie. Given her past behavior, it was a real worry that she might insist on joining us overseas. The thought of living internationally was exciting, but dealing with Julie's demands in a new country was daunting. When we told Julie about our plans to move overseas for work that weekend, she reacted as we expected. "I want to come too," she declared, assuming our move would be a long vacation. Larry tried to explain, "We're going there for work. It won't be as leisurely as you think." But Julie was skeptical. "You're trying to trick me." You're planning to live even more lavishly there without me watching, she accused. We're not moving there permanently. We'll come back after our work is done, I explained, trying to calm her concerns. Yet she retorted, You're saying that, but you're planning to leave me behind, aren't you? Larry and I were both exhausted by this repetitive argument. In an attempt to compromise, Larry suggested, Okay, we can take you with us. But how about we pay for a week-long trip for you instead? Julie perked up at this. Really? Are you sure? She asked. We'll cover your flight and hotel, but you'll need to manage the rest, Larry affirmed. Pleased for the moment, however, the peace was short-lived. A few days later, while Larry was busy with the move arrangements, Julie dropped by unexpectedly. Hey, Polly, Larry said I want to shop over there too. Can you give me some money? She asked. What about the card that Larry gave you? I inquired, knowing she had a designated credit card for such expenses. Julie's face fell. That's the thing. Larry finally took it away from me the other day, she admitted. It seemed she had been reprimanded for overspending and anticipating the challenges of managing finances with different currency rates overseas. Larry had confiscated the card. I don't have that kind of money at hand either. I can't give you money without Larry's approval, I said. Can you ask him? I suggested, knowing full well Larry's stance. It's no use asking him. That's why I'm asking you. She pressed, raising her voice in frustration. Julie did end up going on a 15-day trip abroad, which I assumed Larry managed to fund somehow. Upon her return, she called me brimming with excitement. I'm back, and it was so fun. She shared, recounting tales of her sightseeing and dining adventures. Though I hadn't asked and I overbought souvenirs and couldn't fit them in my suitcase, so I had them shipped here. Can't wait for them to arrive, she exclaimed. That's nice, I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral despite feeling a bit overwhelmed. Thanks to the money you saved up, I had a blast, she exclaimed. Saved up money? What are you talking about? I responded, puzzled and a bit alarmed, having no recollection of setting aside money for her splurge. I found it in your house's sideboard drawer, she said, claiming she took $100,000. I was stunned. Why would such a large amount of cash be stashed away at home, especially not in a drawer where anyone could find it? Confused, I confronted her. I'm not sure what money you're talking about, but taking it from our house without permission is theft, even if you're family. Do you understand that? Julie's response was unsettlingly casual. That's why I'm telling you now. My bad, I used it. Consider it a post-factum report, she declared unapologetically. I have no idea about this money, but if you took it and used it without telling anyone, that's a crime. And if it was something Larry had set aside for an important transaction, it's even more serious, I explained, trying to make sense of the situation. Despite this, there hadn't been any noticeable disruptions in our business finances during her trip. You too live so extravagantly, so why can't I have a little of that? Think of it as doing a favor for your parent. It's not a big deal, right? She rationalized, showing a sense of entitlement that was hard to comprehend. It's one thing to ask for help from your son and his wife, but this is not how you should behave after taking someone else's money, I replied, still in disbelief. I'm glad you enjoyed your trip, but I'll have to discuss this with Larry when he returns. Larry will understand. After all, I'm his only mother, and $100,000 isn't much to him, she assumed. All right, I'll pass the message along, I said, astounded by her lack of awareness. Later that evening, when Larry came home, he looked troubled. Polly, do you know about the money I left in the drawer? He asked urgently. 20 days ago, I withdrew it from my bank account, and now it's gone. Keeping such a large sum around, didn't you think it was careless? he questioned. I needed cash immediately for an urgent payment. Do you know anything about it? It suddenly clicked. Julie's earlier call, thanking me for the $100,000 and mentioning how much fun she had, made sense now. It was Larry's money meant for a crucial purpose. Larry, today Julie called thanking us for the $100,000 and saying she had a blast with it, I explained. I did understand what she meant until now. I said, piecing everything together. So it was Larry's money, but what was such a large amount meant for? I asked. Hey, if it wasn't for a business payment, we've been doing bank transfers for a long time, right? Why cash all of a sudden? I questioned, trying to understand the whole situation and deal with the consequences of Julie's actions. I knew it was Larry's money that had disappeared, but I didn't know the full story. Julie had taken the money without telling us, and I needed to understand. Why, I asked, I was puzzled by the situation. Larry began to explain. After he reduced the credit limit on Julie's card, she started secretly borrowing money from various sources, including consumer finance cards and credit cards she had opened without our knowledge. When Larry found out about her growing debt, he took away all of her cards and withdrew cash to settle her debts directly, aiming to bypass the banking system to keep our business accounts clean and maintain trust with our partners. This was also partly a farewell gesture, as we were moving abroad and wouldn't be around to manage such issues for her. Larry explained, I plan to handle her debts discreetly to prevent our financial records from getting complicated. A month had passed since then, and as I was busy packing for our move, Julie's frequent calls became hard to ignore. When I finally took her call, her voice was filled with desperation. Why aren't you answering my calls? I've called so many times, she said, almost in tears. I'm sorry, Julie. I've been caught up with the move. What's going on? I asked, trying to remain calm and give her a chance to explain her side. It's not just one thing. It's everything. They're asking for payments almost every day. It's too much, Julie confessed, her voice cracking under the strain. Have you tried contacting Larry about this? I asked, hoping she had sought his help first. He seems to be blocking my calls. I can't get through to him at all. Polly, you're my only hope now. Please help me, she pleaded. I realized then just how complex the situation had become. Julie's financial recklessness had led her into a maze of debt, and now, cut off from Larry's assistance, she was turning to me as her last resort. As we prepared to start anew in a foreign country, dealing with Julie's financial chaos demanded immediate attention before we could fully focus on our new beginnings. I was surprised by Larry's drastic approach toward his mother. If he had used the prepared funds to settle Julie's debts directly, the stressful situation might have been avoided. Now, Julie was overwhelmed with collection letters and constant calls from finance companies and lenders. It was like a scene from a dramatic film, something I never thought I'd see in real life. I'll talk to Larry, but I can't guarantee what he'll do. A son should help his mother in trouble, right? Please ask him for me, Julie pleaded at the end of our conversation. But with our business expansion coming up, our finances were already stretched. We couldn't afford to help Julie more, especially since she misused the money meant to settle her debts. When I told Larry about the call, he responded with a mix of fatigue and resignation. I had planned to sort things out before we left, but she squandered that chance herself, he said coldly. The money was originally meant to clear Julie's debts, but she spent it on a lavish trip, leaving no room for excuses. As Julie's calls continued, I followed Larry's lead and blocked her number. Part of me wished to help her. She was, after all, Larry's mother, but there was nothing I could do if he chose to detach from the situation. Meanwhile, our move overseas was fast approaching, and I still had a lot to pack. Amid the chaos, I discovered more troubling news. Julie had decided to sell her house to manage her debts. It turned out she had hidden even more liabilities than we knew. The total amount was so large that even after selling her property, she couldn't cover it all. Losing the family home where Larry had grown up was deeply upsetting. "Our family home is gone. Are you okay with that?" I asked, sensing his sadness. "How can I be okay?" "But there's nothing we can do," Larry replied, his voice tinged with sorrow. Losing the house where he grew up must have felt like a great loss, much like how I felt when I lost my parents' house early in life. Amid these complex feelings and the heavy task of packing, we had to come to terms with the fact that some situations were beyond our control. We needed to focus on our future as we prepared to start anew in a different country. The bittersweet reality of losing a family home struck me deeply. I watched the situation unfold with Larry. Unlike my past experiences, Larry had not only lost the house where his earliest memories were made, but also his emotional sanctuary, all while his mother Julie was still alive. It's a hard feeling to describe, the mix of loss and displacement, especially under such painful circumstances. It's more than just losing a building. It's about losing a part of your history and the comfort of a place to return to that no longer exists. Julie now lives in a modest apartment and faces the daily struggle of managing her debts. She works part-time, which is tough given her age. Job opportunities for older people are limited and often physically demanding and less rewarding. This new reality is a big change from her previous life of unchecked spending and financial freedom. Though I feel sympathy seeing her struggle, it's tempered by knowing her situation is the result of her own poor financial decisions. Life teaches us that actions have consequences, and Julie's case reaffirms that financial responsibility is crucial at any age. In our new environment, the business is thriving beyond our expectations. The move overseas has brought our brand into the international spotlight with a flood of inquiries and offers from all over the world. Every new email and call brings potential for growth and collaboration, which is exciting but also very demanding. Success is thrilling but consumes our entire lives, leaving little room for anything else. Days blend into nights as we navigate time zones and cultural differences, trying to make the most of this golden opportunity. Despite the professional achievements, our personal lives are weighed down by our relentless schedules. The dream of expanding our family seems more like a distant vision, something we hope to revisit when the immediate demands lessen. Larry, who handles everything from logistics to client management, feels the strain deeply. As partners in both life and business, we often ponder our future and priorities, wondering how we can balance our professional goals with our personal desires. I gaze out the window of our tiny apartment into infinity. The neon lights melt into the night as do our lives. It is an optimistic, anonymous look that sharply contrasts the streets we used to know. This city, lively and remorseless, is now our paradise. It was a world away from the silent, simple life we had left. This is an exciting new life, but also a scary one. It is full of countless to-dos and questions that test us at every corner. As we figure out this next chapter, I am drawn to the gravity of what Julie has faced in disgrace from it a greater revelation about our family choices surrounding money. And it was a constant journey, the discovery of how our lives are intricately intertwined with each choice. The many decisions, sacrifices, and outcomes in the moment, well, those were molding themselves around our present reality, but also the legacy we would eventually leave behind. This is the view that promises mystery, a world without names, much different from what we were familiar with over there in our streets. This hustling, bustling city is now our home, but it is a far cry from the quiet we have known. Starting our fresh life is thrilling yet overwhelming, greeted at every corner with to-do lists and choices. In dealing with the reality of this new chapter, I think about Julie's experience and how our life choices inform everything. We are constantly reminded of the depth and breadth of what our actions have to do with life. As we enter this new chapter of our lives, we strive to achieve both success in work and sustaining the relationships that make us who else wealthy outside the world what some marker.